All right, welcome to the Planning Commission. I would now call this meeting to order. Denise, will you call the roll?
Certainly. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Good evening.
Chairman Ledoux,
Here.
Vice Chair Willett,
Here.
Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Clement, Commissioner Souther,
Here.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Malenko,
Here.
Council Rep Maloney.
Here.
Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I now ask for approval of minutes from the June 25, 2025 meeting.
You want a motion
If you
on
could
that?
make a motion, that would be
Yes.
great.
I will make a motion to approve the June 25th, 2025 meeting minutes.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Denise, will you call the roll?
Vice Chair Willett,
Aye.
Commissioner Malenko,
Aye.
Chairman Ledoux,
Aye.
Commissioner Souther,
Aye.
I would now open a public meeting for item 4 on the agenda. Omnibus 5, Amendment to the UDC, an ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending Title 17 of the City of Canyon City Municipal Code concerning cemeteries, group homes, special review uses, front yard fences, and vehicular vision clearance. The provisions of the City Municipal Code, in particular Title 17 thereof, the subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan of the City of Canyon City are incorporated into the record of the hearing as set forth verbatim. May we have a staff report from the city planner?
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. This evening, we are here to consider the 5th proposed amendment to the Unified Development Code since adoption in 2021. This proposed amendment includes modifications concerning group homes, front yard fences in commercial zones, cemeteries, vision clearance triangles, and the revocation of special review uses. The first proposed amendment concerns group homes. Consistent with state statute, there are residences which contain a number of people not related by blood or marriage who are living together for assistance or support based upon common characteristics such as by age, developmental disability, or recovery from a mental health disorder. Recently, a new category of group home has begun to appear in communities all over Colorado, a sober living group home in which unrelated persons live together as part of a recovery program from addictions to alcohol or drugs. When these types of group homes appear, the neighborhoods in which they locate tend to have a negative reaction to them, even though such uses are supported by statute. The First Amendment to Omnibus 5 adds conditions to the use standard for group homes contained in section 1705.050, such that group homes operate in a manner indistinguishable from single-family residence. Among the provisions included are: group homes must be located at least a minimum of 1,000 feet from one another. Group homes shall not require a level of community facilities and services greater than what a single-family residence requires. In this context, community facilities and services include things like the police protection and fire EMS response to a property, garbage collection services, and visitors to a property. Group homes shall not cause traffic or parking congestion, traffic hazards, or more frequent commercial deliveries or other significant traffic impacts beyond what a single-family residence would require. Group homes shall comply with the city's building, health, and safety and fire codes, including occupancy restrictions. And where special circumstances require, city zoning administrator can consider reasonable accommodations under the Federal Housing Amendments Act of 1988, providing that the proposed accommodation does not burden or cost the city and does not create a fundamental alteration of the surrounding zoning. Associated with the refurbishment of the St. Cloud Hotel, the Standard Oil Company building at 701 Main Street is being repurposed as a gift and coffee shop. The contractor working on this renovation sought to install a fence around a hard-paved area near the corner of 7th and Main Street as a seating area for the coffee shop patrons. The proposed fence was in keeping with the style and height of fences used up and down Main Street to enclose seating areas for restaurants. The difference is those fences are being placed in right-of-way and only need a right-of-way permit. The fence at 1701 Main was in the front yard of the property. The problem with this fence request is that the city's fence regulations made no allowances for fences in front yards on commercially zoned sites. The request was taken to the city's Board of Adjustment as a variance application, and while the board approved the variance request, they also recommended that the city modify its fence standards to make front yard fences in commercial areas allowed. Thus, the second proposal to this amendment contained in Omnibus 5 fulfills the Board of Adjustment's reaction by modifying Section 17.06.050C to state the following. Fences must comply with vision clearance standards at intersections. It removes redundant language pertaining to non-residential mixed use and multifamily residential uses for clarity. It specifies that the fence height in commercial areas cannot exceed 42 inches. It does not include a requirement for 50% transparency, as you would find in residential fence codes, because we wanted to make sure that this provision reflected the same requirements that are in the riverfront zoning mixed use. In riverfront zoning, you can have 42-inch fences that do not have to be 50% transparent. And it specifies a list of appropriate materials for front yard fences in non-residential areas outside of the I industrial zone district. Vision clearance areas occur at the intersection of two streets, a street and an alley, or a street and a driveway. They were created to allow drivers the ability to see approaching traffic on the cross thoroughfare before actually entering the intersection. Earlier this year, our Public Works Director noted a discrepancy between the text of Section 17.06.060 and the graphic being used to illustrate the principles contained in this section. It was also noted that the city has two sets of standard for vision clearance areas, one for residential and one for commercial. This was seen as unnecessary as the vision clearance areas aren't necessarily related to traffic volumes, they are related to visibility along the cross thoroughfare. Nevertheless, staff was concerned about revising these standards as it relates to smaller residential lots in Central Canyon City. A 25-foot vision clearance side angle, for example, would effectively sterilize a large portion of a front yard on a corner lot, and we wanted to be sensitive to that. It is with these factors in mind that the third proposed amendment to the UDC in Omnibus 5 amends Section 17.06.060 in the following ways. Intersections of two streets or a street and an alley have a vision clearance side angle of 15 feet, while intersections of street and driveways have a vision clearance side angle of 10 feet. Vision clearance areas do not allow obstructions more than 18 inches in width, which is thus applying primarily to on-site vegetation. The actual vision clearance plane will occupy an area between 30 inches from the ground up to 9 feet above the ground. It also contains a mechanism for review of unique circumstances on a case-by-case basis by the Public Works Director. Finally, it also amends the definition of vision clearance area in the definitions section of the code, Chapter 1713, to remove any reference to dimensional standards so as not to conflict with the regulations in 17.06.060. Currently, cemeteries are classified as a special review use in the RL, rural living, R1, low-density residential, and R1A, low-density small lot zone districts. Within the use tables defined in Chapter 1703, cemeteries are categorized as public institutional uses, but they have no standards connected to them. Beginning in the summer of 2024, staff found that Fremont County was receiving a number of applications to allow for private family cemeteries to be built on residential parcels throughout unincorporated areas of the county. The city appeared to have missed out on this trend until February of 2025, when we did receive a special review use application for a private cemetery on a parcel within the city limits. Council, unsure of how to process this request, adopted an ordinance declaring a 6-month moratorium on the consideration of private cemeteries in order to give staff time to research the issue. A major resource for staff was the Fremont County Coroner, who had already drafted regulations for public health and safety on the subject. These regulations included provisions such as a minimum parcel size of 18 acres. It also specified what, by Canyon City standards, would be enormous setbacks or separation requirements from adjacent lot lines, water sources such as wells, springs, drainage ways, ditches, or lakes, and from sanitary sewer lines. These setbacks or separations were set in 100 feet from the burial plots. It also set a 25-foot separation from any potable water mains, and it required the burial plots to be dug such that they were at least 5 feet higher than the highest seasonal groundwater level. Given lot sizes and dimensions within Canyon City, these regulations are simply not realistic. The coroner strongly recommends that they not be scaled down for smaller residential parcels for health reasons. Thus, as a result, the fourth proposed amendment to the UDC under Omnibus 5 amends Section 1705-100 with a new paragraph A that specifies that cemeteries are only to be considered by public entities. Private cemeteries are to be prohibited within the city limits. Dating back to the 1970s, Canyon City has always had a process in place for the review and approval of a type of discretionary use under zoning known as a special review use, which I will abbreviate here as an SRU. However, unlike the applications of vacations of plats or the revocation of a conditional use permit, SRUs currently have no process in place to revoke them should circumstances warrant this. Staff anticipates receiving an application for revocation of a project originally approved in 2019 that involved 2 SRUs. Thus, accepting an application for an SRU revocation necessitates that a process exists under which the application can be reviewed and completed. Thus, the fifth and final amendment to this UDC as proposed in Omnibus 5 is the establishment of a process for revoking SRUs with the creation of a new Section 1710-030F. This would be an administrative process, and notwithstanding the anticipated submittal of a formal request for revocation of an SRU by the permit holder, 1710-030F anticipates most considerations of revocation will be initiated as a result of complaints or non-compliance with conditions of approval. Any one of 3 criteria can be cited as a finding justifying the revocation. The process then requires the following. The zoning administrator issues a notice of intent to revoke the SRU and the grounds under which the SRU is to be revoked. The zoning administrator will be required to schedule a show cause administrative hearing within 10 days and notify the permit holder of the date, time, and location of the hearing. The permit holder will have the opportunity to speak for or against the revocation of the SRU. This will depend largely on whether the permit holder seeks the revocation voluntarily or not. Once the permit holder has offered testimony, the zoning administrator will find for or against revocation based on both testimony and administrative findings. And then finally, most importantly, a failure by the permit holder to show cause, particularly if they're advocating against revocation of the permit, will be taken as a default judgment for revocation. Now, in summary, public notice requirements concerning the public hearing before the Planning Commission have been met in the timeframe specified in the UDC. As of today, staff has received no phone calls, emails, or correspondence concerning the proposed ordinance being considered by Planning Commission this evening. And with that, staff recommends that Planning Commission, following a public hearing on this request, recommend that City Council approve the draft ordinance being called Omnibus 5 and making 5 modifications to the city's Title 17 Unified Development Code. That would conclude the staff presentation. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions that Planning Commission may have. And with that, I will turn it back over to Chairman Ledoux.
All right, thank you for the presentation. Seeing nobody in the audience, we'll skip that part. Are there questions for Patrick?
Patrick, how did you come up with to develop the criteria for the group homes? What was your process?
So, number one, we take a look at what other municipalities do. In this case, our sample happens to be a municipality I formerly worked at, the town of Parker, Colorado. We did, in fact, have an influx of group homes in residential neighborhoods in the 2010s. And these were the standards that were being applied to them. So we took those and adapted them for Canyon City.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought you'd probably say, but I just needed to ask you. Thank you.
No problem.
Patrick, I'm curious what, going back to the group home thing, what's considered unusual or excessive or any of that in any of these things, other than the large bin and requests for extra trash pickup?
So here's the thing. It's a case of we will know it when we see it. You can't really codify something like that because the more you try to nail the gelatin to the wall, so to speak, the more difficult it becomes to actually get the Jell-O to stick. So it's going to be a case of when we receive complaints, we can begin an investigation, document what we observe, and that can build the case for potentially telling someone that your group home is violating city code. You would either need to come into compliance, and we'll give you a set number of days to do so, or you will have to vacate the premises.
Okay, that said, then the question then becomes, what's excessive number of calls by the police department, or on the police department, or on the fire department, or whatever, we'll know it when we see it.
We would have to rely on what the police department tells us for a particular neighborhood within Canyon City. What's the average number of calls they do for households in that neighborhood in a week or in a month?
Right.
And compare that to the particular home that's under investigation.
And, along that lines, and I know exactly what you're saying in that regard, but, well, I guess you can do the same thing with, like, EMS services.
Mm-hmm.
If you got people trying to rehab from drug or alcohol, then you're likely going to have an increased number of calls for service on EMS, unless perhaps you live in, it's a neighborhood of a bunch of old people like me who are like falling apart every time you turn around, then it might not be excessive. I don't know. I'm just.
Well, consider it this way. One ambulance, even if it's coming in the late night hours, I don't think would be considered unusual. 3 ambulance calls in the same night to the same address would probably be considered
Excessive.
Yes, excessive.
Yeah. And I understand that, yeah. It was just, if there was a basis for, here's a thought process, as I'm starting to say this, is, and I don't know how biased it might or might not be, is to, when approval is given or when they open up one, that begin monitoring the types of calls and comparing, I mean, that's taken a very an extremely proactive, I guess, approach to it is, okay, the minute they move in, now you start monitoring all this stuff. I think that's kind of a biased way of looking at it.
Speaking from experience, because I was the case planner in Parker with one of these sober living group homes, it isn't any one factor that tends to be what kind of forces the city's hand to say, hey, you are in violation of the code. It's sort of the totality of the circumstances.
Right.
It's the fact that over the course of a 14-day period of time, residents in the neighborhood have complained about the fact that the police have arrived at the property no fewer than, say, 8 or 9 times. It's the fact that the trash cans out front seem to constantly be full. They are not taken away from the curb. They are overflowing with trash, and I mean, the one pickup a week doesn't seem to do any good because almost immediately the next day the trash is back. It's potentially traffic lining the streets from visitors who are coming by, consuming all of the parking on the street, making travel through the neighborhood difficult. It's a totality of circumstances. It's not going to be any one thing that the city says, aha, you're in violation. And even when we've noted that there's a violation, what we would probably do is say, all right, you now have to bring yourself into compliance. These are the violations we've noted. These are the actions that you would need to do to bring yourself into compliance, and we're going to give you this set period of time, and we'll come back at the conclusion of this time and see if the conditions have improved. Only if they haven't improved would we say, all right, we now have to force the group home's hand and actually take them to court.
And then to take the other side of it and not wanting to, as you said earlier, that these generally aren't the most popular places coming into a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that when there's a proposal to put one of these in a neighborhood, you're going to get the whole neighborhood coming out here to say, don't put it in our neighborhood,
So
And-
remember, they are permitted uses. So there is no policy, there is no mechanism that the city has to say no to a group home going in. All that we can do is monitor, and after the move-in, if they become a nuisance, we can either abate the nuisance or have them move out. I get the
Right.
public's negative regard for group homes, particularly in this case, sober living group homes. Statutorily, we can't just say no to them. We have to give them a chance to show that they can operate like any other single-family residence, to be fair. But I can promise you, from my experience with these sorts of things, the neighbors are going to be your first line of reporting when it comes to violations. They are very diligent about this because they're not very happy they're there.
Right, and that's where I was kind of going with this, was, okay, now this group home opens in their neighborhood. I can see where there potentially could be a concerted effort by the neighborhood to get these people out of there. And no matter that the group home is crossing the T's, dotting the I's, being a good neighbor, generally speaking, but you're going by the number of complaints from the neighbors coming in.
I don't know that the number of complaints by the neighbors is going to be a valid metric. I think it would be the number of valid complaints. If we're getting complaints
Right.
and we investigate them and there's no merit to the complaint, we will respond. For instance, in See Click Fix, we could not locate the violation of which you speak. That might not please the neighbor, but if it's truthful, we have to post it.
Right, and that's where I'm going. That's the direction I'm going with this, is there going to be a mechanism in place once these start rolling in? Are you going to have a mechanism, or is there already one in place where you have a process to go out and investigate all these neighborhood complaints?
Yes,
Aside from the police department doing their own investigation.
We have a facility through our website called See Click Fix. It gives residents the ability to report on what they think are violations that staff can then investigate and report back.
Okay. That was the other side of the coin I wanted to find out about, yeah. Okay. I'm good
So-
there.
Real quick, to get to the, I guess, the statutory issue, a group home is a licensed entity through the state, correct?
Correct.
So it, on some level, that is a commercial enterprise?
It's a commercial enterprise, but Austin, how would you characterize the difference?
Yeah, it might be commercial in the sense that an apartment building's commercial, that they might be owned and operated by some other entity than the people who are living there, like just a residential rental property would be. But group homes, by definition, per state and federal law, are residential uses. You can't characterize them any other way. And per state and federal law, they have to be treated similarly to other single-family dwelling uses. So it really gets at the heart of what Patrick's saying here, and the regulations in front of the Planning Commission tonight, is to say, really all the city's trying to do is ensure that they're not treated any better or any worse than single-family dwellings.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm kind of hung up on the single-family part, because aren't these group homes sometimes multifamily units, like duplexes, fourplexes, or are we saying that's not allowed?
So in order to function as a group home, it's got to be in an actual single-family residence. That
Okay.
would be one of the criteria that they'd be violating if they moved into a duplex or a triplex.
Okay, great, thank you.
Several months ago, we went through the number of people, unrelated, related, that could live in a
It's eight,
individual
yeah.
structure. How
Yeah.
does that align with,
That does not change. That number does not change.
I guess, any instance of a group home?
In excess of that, yes, that would be a problem. We would have to point out, you cannot have more than 8 unrelated individuals living here, plus someone as like a caregiver.
Okay, so that aspect of our ordinance is still in effect?
It does not change.
Even when it's considered a group home through the state?
Correct.
Are there, hi Patrick, are there other group homes within city limits?
So I know of one that was operating in 4 Mile Ranch. I do not know if they are still there. The house appears to be vacant at the moment. However, I know that the group that was operating that house has expressed interest in other locations in Canyon City. So I know it is a topical issue. I know that there are some neighborhoods that are upset about it currently, and we are trying to put this into place to at least say, hey, we're going to comply with state law. We're going to give these group homes the opportunity to demonstrate they can in fact operate with no more impact than a single-family residence. And if they don't, we have in place a mechanism to get them to move.
Okay, thanks. I have a question on one of the other topics. I'll just get it out of the way. I'm curious about the Standard Oil. What were they asking to do different than what everyone else on Main Street has done with patios?
So they wanted to put the fence in, but the fence is on their private property. It is not within right-of-way. That was the problem. All of the fences that you see, for examples at the restaurants and bars up and down Main, have a license agreement with the city because they are locating those fences within right-of-way, not on private property. And as I said, when we got into looking at this and we realized they're putting a fence in a location that the code says you can't put a fence. So we took them to Board of Adjustment. Board of Adjustment reviewed it, said, we don't see this as a problem, and ultimately approved it, but they were very quick to point out, and we have 2 members of the Board of Adjustment sitting here with us, that you need to amend the code to make sure that this isn't a problem going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other group home questions? Okay. Any fence discussion questions? I guess, can you talk to the 50%? You know, we don't require the 50% or greater open space on that 42-inch fence, but, and that's, we we relate that to the riverfront?
We are making it mirror what the riverfront zoning requires. And riverfront zoning, I believe the intent was that people who were going to be having outdoor cafes and whatnot wanted a bit more of a solid barrier. Again, more architectural, certainly height limited to 42 inches, but they wanted to be able to put panels on there, maybe where they could have additional advertising or something, put banners up during special occasions. So we are mirroring that with these standards for commercial front yard fences.
Okay. Any other fence questions? All right, moving on, the vision clearance. Questions on vision clearance? Can you actually flip to the image or figure?
Certainly.
For the driveway one? Yeah.
Let me forward a few slides. Okay.
I guess my question would be we have street or alley at the 15-foot, and we have driveway at 10-foot. I guess I would consider an alley similar enough to a driveway that the alley would also, so I would say driveway / alley, and then is 10 feet, street would be the 15. Is
I
there a
would
reason?
tend to agree with you, and again, I don't know that alleys, but I would agree with you, alleys don't seem to be as intrusive as a street-to-street intersection. However, the guideline that we used for this was AASHTO, the American Association of State Transportation Highway Officials, and their manual for these sorts of things. That was what our Public Works Director looked at. And they do not draw a distinction between street and street intersections versus street and alley. That's why it was written the way that it was.
I guess especially in the older part of town, we're going to have, there's a whole bunch of, there's actually not that many driveways, but there's a whole bunch of alleys.
There are a whole bunch of alleys.
Certainly not going to meet this.
And again, we do have a mechanism in there so that individual property owners, if they get code enforcement, for example, knocking on their doors saying, you've got a problem with your 6-foot privacy fence, Public Works, our Public Works Director can take a look at these situations on a case-by-case basis and make exceptions if it's warranted.
Okay. I guess one item I could definitely see is the tree. So a tree with a trunk up to 18 inches?
Yes.
May stay within
And that's
that.
in width, so it's 1.5 feet. That would be a pretty big tree.
Yeah. Okay, so but you would reasonably have to trim.
You would
low
have to
branches up to
trim
9
it so
feet.
that if the tree is located within the triangle, the lowest hanging branch would have to be above 9 feet.
Okay. That's all I have. Any other?
So Patrick, once this is passed, then is there going to be a increase in enforcement at all about this? Because it's going to affect a lot of areas that I can think of.
It will affect a lot of enforcement, but I suspect what will happen is where we have properties that are made non-compliant by virtue of this adoption, we will probably consider them legal non-conforming, and it's only when they come to us to propose some sort of a change, for instance in fencing, that we would bring them into compliance at that point. I don't know that we are going to actively go out and try and create enmity with the public by saying, aha, we've just passed this new ordinance and you're in violation, so that fence you just spent all that money on has to come down.
Well, I'm like trees, for example, there's some areas that I can think of where the trees are 4 feet above the sidewalk right now. I don't know what the current standard is. This says 9 feet here. Do you know what it actually is supposed to be? I mean, you can't walk, you have to walk around the trees.
Right now, I don't believe our vision code requirements specify that that plane, between this and this. You can't have these branch obstructions. So I don't know that I've got an answer ready for you. But you're right. I think once we do adopt this, we can use that as a pretext to go talk to some homeowners about the fact that, particularly if they've got branches that are going over sidewalks, you have to have a clearance so that a pedestrian can get through. I don't know that the vision clearance, I mean, particularly if they're already projecting into sidewalks right now, within right-of-way, I don't know that the vision clearance we need to wait for adoption of that before we start enforcing, the height limits or branches protruding into sidewalks. I think we could do that now.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Well,
Patrick, well, I'm looking at the new and improved drawing here. And does the what is it, 3 foot to 9 foot or 18 inch to 9 foot?
30 inches to 9 foot.
Okay, is it still applicable on the driveway clearance as well?
Yes.
Just
It
one-
is. There wasn't enough room on that graphic to really draw it in there, but it is.
Yeah, I don't know if you could kind of fit it in there somehow. One quick thing is just to
I will
kinda-
tell you that this graphic was intended as illustrative purposes for this particular conversation
Okay.
and the one I'm going to have with council. If council adopts this, we are probably going to engage with a consultant to draw us a better example than this.
Right.
But I thought for the purposes of this discussion, this would at least illuminate the principles a little better than the graphic we've been using.
Works. That's all because I know there'll be, well, it says it right here, but I see, I understand you got your triangles there, but more people are literal like me kind of thing, and,
Yes, we're
I
we're
just
going
think
to
you
have
gotta
a
try 'em.
refined version of this that will probably repeat that 30-inch and 9-foot dimension on the driveway side, too.
Patrick, you've shown the illustration of a tree. What about shrubs that are planted right on the corner? Sometimes that grow, so it's real difficult to see around them, like
Yeah, and-
evergreens.
And
That's
we-
included then.
That would be included,
Okay.
yes.
so I can actually picture two structures within an alley I use frequently that would actually be within the 15-foot triangle. So presumably non-conforming, but if those structures, say, go to get a roofing permit,
That's when we would probably tell them, you're going to have to move that structure or demolish it and rebuild something somewhere else.
and I think there's enough established stuff in town that I would rather that structure stay but get a new roof than be, left to.
And
to its
again,
demise.
if the property owner feels that strongly about it, we have the mechanism in the ordinance where they could make an appeal to the Public Works Director. The Public Works Director could hear the case and make a decision.
Any other questions?
Well, on Brian's thing right there, would that be something that would come before, okay, the Public Works Director not able to satisfy this individual, would that be an appeal to the city council?
It would be an appeal to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
And we do, I guess there's other instances that have always been, it's historic. So like it would be grandfathered. I guess why would this
Well, if it's
not-
an historic structure, I think that would be grounds under, the Public Works Director's analysis to say, okay, yeah, there's reasons that this should stay here that have to do with, community identity and aesthetics and historic significance of the structure. So I think an exception will be made in a circumstance like that.
And I guess, is there a way to codify, said structure has been there for 50 years already, hasn't caused a problem. Everyone who lives there deals with it.
The minute you begin trying to codify what qualifies as an exception and what doesn't, I think you get into trouble because you're never going to cover every circumstance. Something's always going to be left out. When something goes to the Board of Adjustment, the Board of Adjustment's criteria are, is there something unique or unusual about the property? Maybe it's, shape of the property, topography of the property. Maybe it's historic significance. Maybe there's some sort of a wildlife habitat associated with it that makes complying with the code generally a very difficult proposition. Those are grounds under which the Board of Adjustment can find for a variance and perhaps overrule the Public Works Director.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think the Public Works Director would be sympathetic to historic structures.
And I guess not, I wouldn't even say historic, just it has existed for a number of years, has never actually caused a problem. So let them get a
So
permit.
the existence of precedent in that case, yeah.
Right. And is that, I guess, trying to read quickly, where is that in the vision clearance? I guess specifically for, those exceptions for the Public Works Director. I guess I do not see that
It
text.
is it's in section 4 of the draft ordinance, paragraph A2, vision clearance areas may be reduced upon determination by the Public Works Director that such a reduction is not expected to have significant impact on vehicle, bicycle, or pedestrian safety at the intersection, driveway, or alley junction. In no case shall such a reduction result in less than half of the required clearance area.
And so that's, if, say, the existing structure was 7 feet from the right-of-way, the Public Works Director doesn't actually have the ability to let that stay, given how this is written.
The way it's written, it would be 7.5 feet would be the maximum.
Right, if it's within 7 feet,
If it's within 7 feet,
it's actually out of the hands of the Public Works Director.
at that point, yes.
Okay, I will voice that sentence be scratched, but we can move on. Any other site vision? Okay. All right, what's next, cemetery? Is that the next one? Perfect. Questions on cemetery? Seems like a good thing to keep in the county.
Is it a dead subject?
Nice, very nice.
It's a grave matter.
Even better. That's it, right?
And I'll help you with this undertaking. We can move on to the special review use.
Do you have more? I guess.
I'll stop there.
Okay. Cemetery was the end, correct?
Cemetery was not the end. We had the revocation of special review uses.
Yes. Okay. Questions on revocation of special use? Can you describe a situation where somebody would get a special use and then the property owner would want to take that away?
So in the situation I'm thinking of, it involves a property over on Mariposa Road that received approval of a minor subdivision, to create 3 lots, 3 site plans, 1 for each lot. One of the lots had a conditional use permit associated with it, and 2 of the lots had special review uses. One was for an RV park, and one was for a caretaker residence. Again, this was under our old code, but because they were approved, they are still valid, even though we now have a new code where, for instance, I don't think caretaker residences require special review uses. This individual has been frustrated that even though no activity has happened, he has not done anything with the approvals that he got 6 years ago. He is now paying 3 times the property tax because he created 3 lots. And he wants to stop doing that, so he wants to vacate the plat and erase the 3 lots that are there. And because the special review use and the conditional use permit are tied to the configuration of the site plans that were tied to the lot configuration, if he vacates the lot, everything else has to go as well. So we are telling him, if you want to do this, you have to do it for everything. You can't just get rid of the lots and keep your special review use. So he is willing to do that, and we are anticipating that this individual will be coming forward and making the application before the end of the year.
So the rejoining the 3 lots would be an administrative procedure?
It's not administrative in that we are sort of copying and pasting what state statute has to say about vacating plats because you have multiple owners, property owners. Austin can clarify some of the details on that, but first of all, you have to have council adopt a resolution of intent to vacate this, and then you draw up the plat, you take it to council, and council has to approve an ordinance that authorizes the plat to vacate the lots. Is that an accurate summary?
Yep.
But it is this, I mean, the same owner.
It's the same owner for
It has
all
to
3
be.
lots. He has not sold any of them. Like I said,
So-
he hasn't done anything with the approvals that he got.
So if the 3 lots become one, the special review use, I mean, by definition is now invalid, right? Because it required 3 lots. Why do we not, like, why don't we just let it be invalid?
Well, it would still be hanging out there. I mean, if someone queried the property, they would see that there is a special review use, and they would inquire about it, and we would have to explain, well, it was a special review use that was based upon a particular site plan for a lot that no longer exists, but we never vacated the special review use approval. So we're trying to clean that up to make sure that, because I anticipate this particular property owner is probably going to sell the reconditioned lot once they've converted it all back to the way it was originally.
And so the way this is written, you know, a special review use that's not applied within a year would automatically revert? So
It would.
if
Now,
this had been in place for
we
this
wouldn't need to
particular
do- we-
condition,
We wouldn't need to do this.
it would have automatically
Yes.
already vacated.
It's the fact that we have never had a provision to revoke a special review use in place before.
Okay. Any questions on that one? I guess we will now close the public hearing. Any further discussion from commission? I would now call for a motion and a second. And I guess I would aim to make that motion. Hang on. There we go. I would move that the Planning Commission recommends City Council adopt the attached draft ordinance, making 5 modifications to the city's Title 17 Unified Development Code with a modification to Section 17.06.060 Vision Clearance, Section A, Item 2, the last sentence that reads, "In no case shall such a reduction result in less than half of the required clearance area," be stricken.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Denise, will you call the roll?
Chairman Landu,
Aye.
Commissioner Maleko,
Aye.
Chairman Willett, Vice Chair Willett,
Aye.
Commissioner Suther,
Aye.
And that's that. Any announcements and discussions?
As I mentioned at the last meeting, the RFPs for the Black Hills Energy property, we are anticipating that it closes, the period closes July 31st. We are eager to see how many proposals we get and begin sifting through them. And we've got Commissioners Willett and Smith, who are going to be part of the selection committee that helps us pour through all of these and interview folks and find the one consultant we want to go with.
And we will be notified when we're supposed to do something on that?
I will be quite diligent about that,
I
yes.
was almost worried that I might have missed something somewhere.
Just please make sure if IT sends you any training that you complete it so they don't turn your email off.
I did mine.
Good.
And with that, the next Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for August 27th, 2025. And with that, we are adjourned.